On April 18, 1991, at Detroit's Fox Theater, a man stood up during Whitney's ballad and shouted 5 words that echoed through the silent venue. Whitney froze. The orchestra stopped. What followed was the most raw moment of her entire career. Write in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? And what time is it right now? The Fox Theater in Detroit was considered the crown jewel of America's theatrical venues. That Thursday night, all 5,048 seats were filled for Whitney Houston's I'm Your Baby Tonight tour. She was 27 years old, at the peak of her vocal powers, untouched by the struggles that would come later. The audience didn't know they were about to witness the moment that would haunt Whitney for the rest of her life. It was 9:17 p.m. Whitney had just begun All the Man That I Need, her newest ballad, that would hit #1 the following week. The theater was so quiet, you could hear the soft mechanical hum of the vintage 1928 air conditioning system. Whitney stood center stage in a black velvet dress, a single spotlight creating a halo effect around her silhouette. Her voice floated through the darkness. I used to cry myself to sleep at night. Then it happened. A man in the orchestra section, row J, seat 114, stood up. James Mitchell, 43 years old, Ford assembly line worker, father of 2. He'd paid $65 for that ticket, a fortune for him in 1991. He stood up in the middle of Whitney's most vulnerable moment and shouted 5 words that would change everything. You killed my daughter, Whitney. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Whitney's voice cut off mid-note. Her hand, which had been gracefully extended toward the audience, dropped to her side. The orchestra continued for 3 more bars before the conductor, Michael Forrester, noticed something was wrong and raised his hand for silence. But here's what nobody understood until now. 5,048 people sat frozen. Security guards started moving toward row J. But Whitney raised her hand to stop them. Her wireless microphone picked up her rapid breathing. She stared at James Mitchell, the stranger who had just accused her of murder in front of thousands. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. For the first time in her professional career, Whitney Houston had no voice. James Mitchell remained standing. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't crazy. Tears streamed down his weathered face as he held up a photograph, invisible to most of the audience, but clear to Whitney under the stage lights. A young girl, maybe 16, smiling, wearing a Whitney Houston concert t-shirt. Her name was Denise, James said, his voice breaking but loud enough for the front sections to hear. He died trying to sound like you. The most devastating part was about to unfold. Whitney set down her microphone on the piano and did something unprecedented. She walked to the edge of the stage, then down the steps into the audience. No security, no protocol, just Whitney Houston in her black velvet dress, walking up the aisle toward a grieving father. The spotlight operator didn't know what to do, so he followed her, creating a path of light through the darkness. The audience watched in stunned silence. As Whitney reached row J, James Mitchell was shaking now, still holding the photograph. Up close, under the harsh follow spot, everyone could see the girl in the picture. Beautiful, young, gone. Whitney's first words, picked up faintly by her abandoned stage microphone, were "Tell me about her." Stop. What happened next will change how you see everything. James Mitchell collapsed into his seat, and Whitney, one of the biggest stars in the world, sat down next to him, right there in row J, seats 113 and 114, while 5,046 other people watched in absolute silence. The security guards formed a loose circle, keeping other audience members back, but Whitney waved them away. She wanted to hear this. James's story came out in broken pieces. Denise Mitchell, 16 years old, had been obsessed with Whitney Houston since How Will I Know came out in 1985. She sang constantly, practiced for hours, trying to hit the high notes, trying to match that power, that perfection. She'd auditioned for their church choir, their school talent show, local competitions, but her voice wasn't Whitney's voice. It was a good voice, a sweet voice, but not the voice. On April 8, 1991, 10 days before this concert, Denise had attempted Whitney's greatest love of all. At a Detroit talent competition, she'd pushed too hard on the climax, trying to hit the high C that Whitney made sound effortless. Something ruptured in her throat, a rare condition, hemorrhaging of the vocal cords that triggered a massive anxiety attack. Her heart, already stressed from performance nerves, couldn't handle it. She collapsed on stage at the Detroit Music Hall, 7 blocks from where Whitney now sat. But the part that destroyed Whitney was still coming. Denise didn't die immediately. She was conscious in the ambulance, conscious in the emergency room. Her last words, according to her father, were, "Tell Whitney I tried." The Fox Theater fell so silent that people in the balcony could hear Whitney crying, not performing sadness, actually crying, shoulders shaking, makeup running in black rivers down her face. She took the photograph from James's trembling hands and held it to the light. Denise Mitchell, forever 16, wearing a Whitney Houston World Tour 1,987 inches t-shirt, smiling like she had her whole life ahead of her. "How did you get tickets?" Whitney asked, her voice barely a whisper, but somehow carrying through the silent theater. "Denise bought them," James replied. 3 months ago, with her McDonald's money, for my birthday. She said we could see you together." The revelation that would haunt everyone. Whitney stood up then, still holding Denise's picture. She turned to face the audience, 5,000 people, who'd paid to see a concert, but were witnessing something else entirely. Her microphone was on the stage, 30 feet away, but her trained voice carried, "This man's daughter died trying to sing like me." She was 16 years old. 16. Whitney's voice cracked. "How many of you have daughters? How many of you have children who sing? Stand up if your child sings." Slowly throughout the theater, people began standing. Dozens, then hundreds, maybe 1,000 parents, standing in the darkness, suddenly understanding that their children's dreams could kill them. Whitney continued, her voice stronger now, but raw with emotion. "I need to tell you something, all of you, especially the young people. My voice is not worth dying for. No voice is no dream is worth." She couldn't finish the sentence. Here's what the cameras didn't capture. Whitney walked back to the stage, but not to perform. She sat on the edge, feet dangling like a child, still clutching Denise's photograph. She began talking, not singing, just talking to 5,000 strangers about the pressure of perfection, about the cost of being the voice, about the girls who destroyed themselves trying to be her. "You want to know a secret?" she said, voice echoing through the vaulted ceiling. "I damaged my voice when I was 15, trying to sound like Aretha Franklin. Pushed too hard, too fast. My mother found me in the bathroom, coughing up blood. I couldn't speak for 3 weeks. My mother, Cissy Houston, gospel legend, told me something I never forgot. God gave you your voice, not Aretha's. Use the voice you have, not the voice you want." The Fox Theater's recording system captured all of this. The tape sits in their archives, marked "Do Not Distribute, April 18, 1991, incomplete performance." What it recorded next was even more extraordinary. The moment that changed everything about that night, Whitney asked James Mitchell to come on stage. This broken father, still in his work clothes, because he'd come straight from the Ford plant, climbed those steps. Whitney took his hand and led him to center stage. The spotlight, that unforgiving circle of white, illuminated them both. "This is James Mitchell," Whitney announced. "His daughter Denise died 10 days ago. She was 16. She loved to sing. And tonight we're going to sing for her." Not professionally, not perfectly, just singing, the way kids sing, the way we all sang before we knew we were supposed to be embarrassed by our voices. She turned to the orchestra. "Michael, do you know Amazing Grace?" The conductor nodded. Of course he knew it. Everyone knew it. But what happened next? Nobody expected. Whitney began singing Amazing Grace, not in her powerful trained voice, but soft, broken, imperfect. She deliberately cracked on the high notes. She let her voice waver. She sang like a grieving woman, not like Whitney Houston. And throughout the Fox Theater, something unprecedented happened. The audience began singing with her, not just singing, crying and singing. 5,048 voices, joining in the most imperfect, most beautiful version of Amazing Grace ever performed in that historic venue. James Mitchell sang too, off-key, voice destroyed by grief, but singing for his daughter, with the woman his daughter had died trying to become. Halfway through the second verse, Whitney stopped everyone. "No," she said. "We're doing this wrong. We're still trying to sound good." Denise was 16. 16-year-olds don't care about sounding good. They sing in their bedrooms, in their showers, with hairbrushes as microphones. They sing with joy, not judgment. Again, and this time, sing like nobody's listening. Sing like Denise. The truth that the music industry tried to hide, what followed, was chaos. Beautiful chaos. 5,048 people singing Amazing Grace, deliberately off-key, deliberately loud, deliberately imperfect. Some people started laughing through their tears. Others were dance-singing in their seats. The Fox Theater, which had hosted perfect performances since 1928, shook with the sound of liberation. Security guards sang. Ushers sang. The girls selling programs in the lobby ran inside to join. Whitney and James stood center stage, holding hands, singing and crying and laughing simultaneously. At one point, Whitney actually fell to her knees, not in performance, but in genuine emotional collapse, and James, this assembly line worker from Detroit, helped her back up. The photograph of Denise lay on the stage between them, caught in the spotlight like a third performer. When the song ended, the silence was deafening. Then Whitney did something that would cost her millions in violated contracts. She canceled the rest of the show. "I can't sing my songs tonight," she announced. "Not after this. Not after Denise. Instead, I want everyone to go home and sing. Sing in your cars. Sing to your children. Sing badly. Sing loudly. Sing like Denise Mitchell, who loved music more than life. And if you have a dream, chase it, but don't die for it. No dream is worth dying for." What she did next shocked everyone. Whitney walked back to James Mitchell, still on stage, and made an announcement that her lawyers would later call career suicide. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm establishing a fund tonight, the Denise Mitchell Foundation, for young singers who've damaged their voices trying to be perfect. Free medical care, free vocal therapy, free counseling, because her voice broke again, because your daughter's death has to mean something." She turned to the audience. "I'm donating my entire fee from tonight, $250,000, to start it. If you want refunds for tonight's show, take them. If you want to donate your ticket price to Denise's foundation, we'll have people in the lobby." Nobody asked for a refund. Not one person out of 5,048. The security footage shows something remarkable. As the audience filed out, they were different, hugging strangers, singing randomly. A group of teenagers stood in the lobby singing "How Will I Know?" badly, joyfully, the way Denise might have in her bedroom. The ticket sales from that night, $327,000, became the seed money for a foundation that still exists today, having helped over 3,000 young singers recover from vocal injuries. But the story doesn't end there. 2 weeks later, Whitney returned to Detroit. No publicity, no announcement. She went to Denise Mitchell's grave at Woodlawn Cemetery. James had told her where during their time on stage. She found it easily. Fresh earth, simple headstone. Denise Marie Mitchell, 1975 to 1991. She sang with angels. The groundskeeper, Robert Hayes, witnessed what happened next. Whitney sat by that grave for 3 hours, sometimes singing softly, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in silence. When she left, she'd place something on the grave, her Grammy Award for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. The inscription she'd had added read, "To Denise, who reminded me that singing is about joy, not perfection. Whitney." The award is still there. James Mitchell built a glass case to protect it. Every year on April 8th, the anniversary of Denise's death, young singers come to leave flowers and sing, imperfectly, joyfully, honestly. The detail that changes how we remember Whitney, in Whitney's personal journals, discovered after her death in 2012, April 18, 1991, has an entry that runs for 12 pages. She wrote about Denise, about James, about the weight of being someone's impossible dream. One line stands out. "A man accused me of killing his daughter tonight. He was right. Not literally, but spiritually. How many girls are destroying their voices trying to be me? How many dreams have become nightmares because of the impossible standard I represent?" She ended the entry with a resolution. "From now on, in every interview I'll tell them, don't try to sing like me, sing like you. The world needs your voice, not another Whitney." And she did. Watch any Whitney Houston interview after April 1991. She always includes that message. The most incredible revelation came years later. In 2010, James Mitchell appeared on a Detroit radio station. The interviewer asked about that night at the Fox Theater. James revealed something Whitney never publicized. She'd paid for Denise's funeral, all of it. The elaborate flower arrangements everyone assumed came from the community. Whitney, the beautiful headstone? Whitney, the choir that sang at the service? Whitney arranged it, but insisted they sing imperfectly, joyfully, the way Denise would have wanted. But more than that, Whitney stayed in touch with James, called him every April 8th without fail. Even in 2011, when she was struggling with her own demons, she called. Their last conversation was on April 8, 2011, 10 months before her death. She told him, "Denise saved me, James. That night, your daughter saved me from becoming something inhuman. She reminded me that music is love, not perfection." The Fox Theater keeps a plaque in row J, seat 114. It doesn't mention the incident. It simply says, "On April 18, 1991, humanity happened here." The final truth that brings everything full circle. On February 11, 2012, the night Whitney Houston died, James Mitchell was at home in Detroit. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the precise time Whitney had stopped singing that night in 1991, his phone rang. It was Whitney's assistant calling with the news. But James already knew. He'd been watching the news with a strange feeling all day. He went to his closet and pulled out a box he'd kept for 21 years. Inside was Whitney's microphone from that night. She'd left it on the stage and later sent it to him with a note. So Denise's story will always have a voice. James Mitchell still has that microphone. Sometimes, he says, late at night, if he holds it close, he can hear both of them, Whitney and Denise, singing together, imperfectly, joyfully, forever. The Fox Theater performance of April 18, 1991, is considered Whitney Houston's most important concert, not because of what she sang, but because of what she didn't sing, because sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that chooses silence. Sometimes the greatest performance is admitting you're human. And sometimes a 16-year-old girl who died trying to sing can teach the greatest singer in the world how to truly live. 5 words changed everything. "You killed my daughter, Whitney." But in the end, Denise Mitchell didn't die for nothing. She died and gave Whitney Houston something priceless, her humanity back. And Whitney spent the rest of her life making sure no other girl would die trying to be perfect. The Denise Mitchell Foundation has saved 3,000 voices, but more importantly, it saved Whitney's soul. At least for a while.